Welcome! Let's dig a little deeper into environmental literacy, especially at the K-12 levels. One way of doing that is to look at the K-12 Environmental Education Guidelines for Excellence. These guidelines present student expectations that lead to environmental literacy. That is, they describe what students should know and be able to do if they're on their way to becoming environmentally literate. The K-12 EE Guideline document was developed as a resource that provides a common voluntary set of guidelines for EE, expectations for achievement in 4th, 8th, and 12th grades, a framework for EE programs and curricula, demonstrations of how EE can be used to meet traditional core standards, and a definition of the aims of EE. As with all of the other sets of guidelines, it was developed through a broad-based review and comment process. Each of the grade level bands, 4th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade, are organized into 4 strands. The overarching sets of knowledge or skills in these 4 strands are essential for environmental literacy. Strand 1, questioning, analysis, and interpretation skills. Strand 2, environmental processes and systems. Strand 3, skills for understanding and addressing environmental issues, and Strand 4, personal and civic responsibility. Within Strand 2 and Strand 3, there are substrands. Strand 2 is divided into 3 substrands: Earth's physical and living systems, human systems, and environment and society. Strand 3 is divided into 2 substrands: analyzing and investigating issues, and decision-making and action skills. Let's look more closely at the framework for Strand 1. There are no substrands in Strand 1. The strand is subdivided into 7 guidelines. Guidelines further articulate the knowledge and skills necessary for environmental literacy. They provide another level of detail for each of the strands. In Strand 1, questioning, analysis, and interpretation skills, the guidelines, in the lighter colored ovals with the dots, provide structure for inquiry. Learners master fundamental skills for gathering, organizing, interpreting, and synthesizing information in order to communicate ideas and give explanations. To help interpret the guidelines, a set of performance indicators for each guideline are presented in the framework. As we began to examine Strand 2 more closely, we saw that there were 3 substrands within this strand: Earth's physical and living systems, human systems, and environment and society. Going further, we can see how these substrands are broken down into a variety of guidelines which articulate the knowledge and skills necessary for environmental literacy. There are 2 sets of guidelines for substrand 2.1, 4 for 2.2, and 4 for 2.3. And as with the first strand, we see the performance indicators are available that provide parents, teachers, and administrators examples of what students are able to do. For example, in grades K to 4, Strand 2, Substrand 2.2 Human Systems, Guideline A, one of the performance indicators is to list some of the civic activities that they, their families, and other community members take. Discuss what motivates people to participate in civic activities and how people's values are tied to these efforts. You'll find this performance indicator example on page 29 of the K-12 Guidelines for Excellence Manual. Exploring Strand 3 more closely, we saw that Strand 3 was subdivided into 2 substrands: analyzing and investigating issues, and decision-making and action skills. Each of the substrands is further divided into several guidelines. Examples of performance indicators are available for each guideline in the framework. As skills are refined and applied to the context of environmental issues at the age-appropriate scale, students learn to think more broadly about these issues and human viewpoints. They begin to understand intended and unintended consequences of their actions and the actions of others. Lastly, let's look more closely at Strand 4, Personal and Civic Responsibility. There are 3 guidelines associated with Strand 4: recognizing rights and responsibilities, recognizing efficacy and developing agency, and accepting personal responsibility. As learners develop and apply concept-based learning and skills for inquiry, analysis, and action, they also understand that what they do individually and in groups can make a difference. Each of these guidelines is supported by numerous examples of performance indicators, which you can check out in the K-12 manual. The whole picture would look something like this. 4 strands. Within strand number 2 and strand number 3, there are substrands. Each strand or substrand has several guidelines. All of the guidelines provide examples of performance indicators that help instructors evaluate whether students are being exposed to and are enhancing or developing cognitive skills. Performance indicators provide examples of what students are able to do, such as identifying patterns and relationships in events, designs, organisms, and sets of numbers, and illustrate their findings. Grades K-4, Strand 1, Guideline E. Or provide evidence-based examples of how environmental changes impact some communities more than others. Grades 5 to 8, Strand 2.3a. Taken together, these strands create a vision of environmental literacy. The sequence of the strands and the individual guidelines themselves may suggest that some skills or knowledge serve as a foundation for others. But the process of becoming environmentally literate is not linear, and the sequence of the guidelines is more a function of bringing an order and logic to this document rather than a reflection of the hierarchy of skills and knowledge. Thank you. We hope you enjoy your investigations into environmental literacy.